everything changed back in the 70s when Congress passed the Revenue Act of 1978, thus creating the 401k. And by the 90s, millions of Americans had invested trillions of dollars into their 401k plans. But saving for retirement was just step one. Step two was trying to figure out, hey, how do I turn this nest egg into a reliable income stream for my retirement? And then step three, which is the modern evolution, is making that money last for an early retirement, especially retirements that can be stretched from 40 to 50 years. And the biggest challenge we have now is that, traditional retirement planning is still stuck in the age of rules like the 4% rule, rules of thumb. And although the rule never really implied that everyone should follow it, the retirement planning industry and popular media have touted this rule and really turned it into conventional wisdom. And because they turned it into a one-size-fits-all solution, it often leaves a lot more questions than answers, especially for those that want to retire early. So in this video, I'm going to talk about some of the best retirement withdrawal research that you'll want to consider applying to your own early retirement so that you can optimize your own early retirement withdrawal strategy. Okay, so first, no one knows how long they'll live. Some people reach their hundreds, others don't make it past their 60s, and this uncertainty makes a withdrawal strategy pretty tricky. Now, do you plan for a shorter retirement or a longer one? And how much can you safely spend when you retire much earlier than the average person? Now, what people neglect when they just stick with a simple rule of thumb is that your age and your health play a big role in how much money you can safely withdraw, and how much you can spend will depend, of course, on the length of your plan. And if you don't plan for this, you could withdraw too much too soon or not spend enough and end up in a place of regret. But we can better understand the relation between longevity and planning for an early retirement by looking at this chart. This chart basically shows the dynamic relationship between longevity and withdrawal rates throughout your retirement. Basically, what it shows is the withdrawal rate that could be taken, for example, from a 60-40 stock and bond portfolio at various levels of sustainability, right? Defined as the estimated chance that a portfolio would survive at any given withdrawal plan to the end or past the planning horizon. Now, each sustainability line arcs upward. If an investor planned to retire at age 65 and felt comfortable knowing that, hey, there's a 75% chance their nest egg would last 30 years, the investor could start with a higher withdrawal rate, perhaps 5%. Already, that's much higher than the 4% rule would suggest. And as the person ages, you can see the withdrawal rate could continue to rise without increasing the probability of running out of money because the plan length is constantly evolving. Now, what's the solution to solving for this when it comes to your own early retirement withdrawal strategy? Well, the solution number one is to ignore those rigid rules of thumb and start with your own situation, factoring in your age, what your health is. Are you planning just for yourself or you and your spouse retiring? A lot of softwares, not just advisor softwares, can help you develop a plan that actually factors in longevity, expectancy into your planning. And if you're someone who is retiring early, there's going to be a lot more time of withdrawals coming from that portfolio. So don't just run your plan once, say, hey, how much can I spend? You want to update your plan as things change. If your health improves or declines, you'll need to adjust. If your spending needs to go up, you got to plan for that too. By ignoring these facts, it can lead to bad retirement outcomes. This really isn't a one and done process. You don't just calculate a number and say, hey, I think I'll live about 30 years and then I'm just going to spend that forever. Life just does not work that way. Your health will change, your needs will shift. Some years you'll spend more, other years you'll spend less. The most successful retirees don't stick to a rigid plan, they adapt. So again, you want to set the right longevity expectations for your plan. Again, nobody knows the birth certificate expiration date, but there's a lot of great tools you can use as far as factoring in longevity into your spending. Okay, so the second key that everyone should know is when it comes to early retirement withdrawal strategies is understanding realistic spending patterns. Now, what do I mean by that? Most people assume, hey, a couple, let's say they spend $10,000 a month at age 65, they'll need the same amount adjusted for inflation every month for the rest of their lives. But research shows that spending doesn't seem to work that way in practice. Retirement isn't a straight line, it's actually more of a smile. And if we take a look at this, spending tends to start high when you're active and healthy, especially those that retire early. It slows down as your lifestyle simplifies and then ramps up again later when your healthcare costs might rise. This is called the retirement spending smile, the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years. But here is where things can go wrong. Again, if you stick that flat spending rule, you could end up in the regret zone where you spend a little bit too cautiously early on when you're healthy, you're eager to travel, explore, enjoy your hobbies. Then by the time you're ready to spend more, your health or your energy just isn't the same. And as an advisor, I really want to help my clients avoid that lingering feeling of, hey, I worked so hard, but I really didn't get to enjoy it. The flip side is also, again, maybe you're overspending way too early without a plan, and you're struggling financially later in life when health expectancies start to hit pretty hard. And we're going to talk a little bit how to prevent that later on in the video, but both paths really lead to the same feeling of regret. Either you didn't spend enough when it mattered, or you ran out of resources when you needed them most. This is why I believe that planning for that retirement spending smile, planning more realistically, can really help you through each phase of your retirement. And might mean front loading some of your spending when you need the most, maybe taking bigger trips, spending more on your family, which means aiming to avoid that regret later on in life and not spending enough. Again, this is a next level part of a withdrawal strategy, especially for early retirement. Okay, so now let's take this to level number 3, which is factoring in non-portfolio cash flows and tax optimization into your withdrawal strategy. Now, what do I mean by that? So it's all the additional income streams that shape your retirement. Things like Social Security. Maybe you have rental income. Some people have pensions, part-time jobs, even inheritance. That's going to play a factor. Now, these non-portfolio cash flows can make your retirement plan a lot more dynamic and sometimes a little bit more complex. Now, for instance, your portfolio withdrawals won't be constant through your retirement, and here's kind of a visual of why that might not be the case. Now, withdrawals from the portfolio, and maybe in this example some part-time work, or maybe it's a side project for you, are enough to cover some expenses. But if you retire before Social Security, that might mean a really high withdrawal rate. Some of my clients are withdrawing 6% or even 9% in those first few years, and that can feel alarming. Most people have been programmed, myself included. I used to be programmed, hey, 4% rule is a good benchmark, but the game changer is knowing that, hey, once Social Security kicks in, or in case once a pension perhaps kicks in, those portfolio withdrawals are going to drop significantly. Now, that's going to reduce pressure from your portfolio later on in life and make early retirement a lot more possible for a lot of people. And if we circle back, and on top of that, we also add in the retirement spending smile, those go-go, slow-go, and no-go years. Now you can see how spending is naturally decreasing over time, especially in real terms, which means your withdrawal strategy is much more complex and a lot different than a simple rule of thumb would suggest. The problem might come if you don't plan for this complexity, and maybe that might mean working longer than you really had to because you just didn't know. But there's also another critical piece of this puzzle, and that, of course, is the tax optimization of withdrawals. Now, where you withdraw money from first when you retire really matters. Should you start with a brokerage account, your 401k, a Roth IRA, or maybe just live off cash for the first years? Now, choosing the wrong order could mean higher taxes, maybe lower growth, and less money to spend over the course of your retirement. And without accounting for these factors, you could end up with maybe a disjointed plan that doesn't work when life happens, which means your retirement might be fragile or inflexible, uncertain. But when you understand how cash flows and how tax strategy all fits together, everything sort of comes together, which means instead of being scared by a higher withdrawal rate early on, you realize it's part of a bigger plan. Those non-portfolio cash flows come in and they reinforce your plan right when you need them, and that can reduce your reliance on your portfolio later on. And these small tweaks to your tax withdrawal strategy could mean potentially saving hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in taxes over the course of a 30, 40, even 50-year retirement. That means more money in your pocket to spend. Now, this sort of thing can give you a lot more confidence to retire earlier, knowing that your money is working as hard as you did so that you can enjoy this next chapter of your life. And now we've reached the final and perhaps one of the most important parts of an early retirement withdrawal strategy, and that is dynamic spending. Now, when someone talks to me and they say they want to retire early, the number one thing I want to talk to them about is, hey, how willing are you to be flexible with your spending? And in my opinion, and based on a lot of great research, This is something that is a big needle mover in terms of risk management, as well as the potential to spend a lot more in retirement. And here's why. Now, instead of sticking to, hey, I'm going to spend this amount adjusted for inflation for the rest of my life, instead I'm going to be dynamic, which means, hey, I might have to temporarily reduce my withdrawals when markets are down, and I also have the opportunity to increase it when markets are up. The problem is that markets just don't follow a straight line throughout your retirement. You're almost guaranteed to have some bear markets. Now, if you keep withdrawing the same amount during that downturn, you're sort of forcing yourself to sell assets at a loss, which compounds over time, and that can cause a lot of damage to your savings, especially earlier on. Now, they call this sequence of returns risk, but what we know is that these small and temporary spending reductions during those tough years can make a massive difference. And when I work with clients, they often say, really, a 5% reduction, that's it? It doesn't feel like much in the moment, but it has a ripple effect, right? For example, for our clients looking at this chart, if their portfolio dropped by a certain number based on risk level in their plan, we will start to make those small and temporary reductions. And that is one of the biggest risks for someone who wants to retire early is, again, the market dropping right when they retire. But this is something that can help solve that risk. Now, in practice, what my firm uses is what's called the risk-based guardrails approach, and that helps clients navigate a lot of these risks. Basically, it combines everything we discussed as far as longevity planning, the retirement spending smile, tax-efficient withdrawals, those non-portfolio cash flows, and of course, the most important thing, dynamic spending. Of course, if you're managing this on your own, there are a lot of great tools that you can explore. I'd research the Guyton-Klinger approach or research from Vanguard about dynamic spending. I'll include the links to those in the show notes. Now, these methods also provide a good structure to help you start thinking about, hey, how I'm going to start adjusting my withdrawals based off what is happening to my portfolio. So let's bring this all together because I want to make this as practical as possible for you guys. Number one is plan for longevity. There's great tools on there as far as life expectancy calculators to set realistic planning horizons. You obviously know your health better than anyone and also know your family's health, and also decide what type of longevity risk are you willing to take. And then, of course, continue to update your plan as your life and as your health evolves. Number two is understanding the spending phases in retirement. I do encourage people, hey, maybe prioritize spending a little bit more when you're healthiest, but also make sure you're prepared for those rising health costs later on. Perhaps you start to bucket specific spending in the first 10 years of retirement, budget for the basic expenses in the middle, and then set aside a buffer for later on as far as healthcare costs. And then thirdly, lever non-portfolio cash flows. List all your income streams and factor in when they'll kick into your withdrawal strategy. This could be a huge unlock mentally, knowing that, hey, it's okay that maybe I'm taking a little bit higher withdrawals right now because I know that those other cash flows are going to come in later and make my withdrawal rate a lot lower, a lot more realistic. And then lastly, most importantly, in my opinion, is adopting a dynamic spending approach, being flexible, reducing spending during a down market, and then also giving yourself permission to increase it during those market upswings. Tools like Guyton-Klinger or the risk-based guardrails approach can really help guide you and make sure you do some research, right? If you want to do this yourself, there's a lot of great calculators online that you might want to be aware of. But if you want to get into the details of what accounts to withdraw from first and how to pay the least amount of tax, especially lifetime taxes, when you withdraw from different accounts, you should definitely watch this video where I go through how to think about that and also how to think about Roth conversions and how those could be a powerful tool to help you accomplish your goals. Once again, this is Matt Calcagno, certified financial planner and advisor over at 1 Degree Advisors. I do also want to let you know that our firm is looking to help a limited amount of families in 2025 with their retirement planning. So if you're on the hunt for a financial planner and you think we have the right expertise to help you, click the link in the description to set up a call with us. We'd love to talk with you. Catch you on the next video.